The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers the fear. So again, Dr. Mandela is trying to say that a brave man is not only who does not feel afraid and he says, I'm not afraid of anything and I can do anything. But brave man is who is he who conquers fears, who keeps on moving forward and struggles. In this reference, he's referring to the non-stop freedom struggle despite of all those people, fellow South Africans, who laid down their lives and sacrificed. But the freedom struggle did not stop. He's saying about that. No one is born hating another person because of the color of its skin. No one is born hating someone. When you are born as a baby, you don't just end up hating everyone. You do not hate each other because of the background, yeah, economic distribution. You do not hate someone on the basis of religion. When you're born, people must learn to hate, and if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love. For love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite. If you have the emotion of hatred, he's trying to say that is when the emotion of love also will come out of it. A very strong line. Because unless and until you don't have that emotion as a human being in your heart to hate something, you will not have an emotion to love. The transformation from negative to positive can happen only when you understand both emotions, positive and negative. Even in the grimmest times in prison, even in one of the most difficult times of times when he was in captivity in the prison. Imagine how would you feel if you have spent your entire youth in cage, in prison, and I were pushed to our limits. I was forced to push myself to limits where I could no longer hold my emotion. I would see a glimmer of humanity in one of the guards. I would still see a positive side in one of the prison guards who would be guarding the prison, and I would still see some positive shade on his face. He's trying to take out the only thing which was a driving force for Nelson Mandela to survive so long is try to look at the positive side of things in this situation during the freedom struggle. And it was enough to reassure me than keep me going. And he said, when I looked at that man, maybe a small smile, maybe a gesture, maybe a hello, and that kept on helping him to move on. Man's goodness is a flame that can be hidden but never extinguished. You know, a man's quality as a human being cannot be you cannot bury it. This is what he's trying to say, and you can hide it. I'm sorry. A man's goodness is a flame that can be hidden but never distinguished. You can bury it, but you can never extinguish it. You can never light it out. Yeah, this is what he's trying to say. In life, every man has twin obligations. Obligations means when you're forced, when you have particular duties that you cannot let go of. You cannot deny those. You cannot avoid. Obligations to his family. As a man, you have to take care of your family, your mom, dad, your children, your wife, his parents, his wife, his children. And then you have another obligation, a necessity, a duty that you cannot run away from, an obligation to his people, fellow people. He's referring to himself, the sense of duty that he had towards fellow black South Africans, his community, black South Africans, his country, South Africa. In a civil and humane society, in a society where human beings live as civilized people, each man is able to fulfill those obligations according to his own inclinations and abilities. When you're living in a society, you have and as a human being, I think you are in a position to divide your duty towards your family and your country also, and everyone has that sense to divide his responsibilities. But in a country like South Africa, it was almost impossible for a man of my birth and color to fulfill both of these obligations. When you are living under apartheid for such a long time, he's trying to say it was very difficult for me to take care of my family, my children, because there were so many restrictions as a South African, black South African. They were not. Remember when I started the story, there was a lot of discrimination about how they were not allowed to participate as fellow South Africans. They had limited education freedom. Everything was limited. So basically, they were almost like slaves in their own country. And in that situation, he's trying to say that there was no chance of choosing your own representative, because the rule of apartheid had no sense of democracy, which is one of the most important key factors to grow as a country, as a human being, as a citizen. In South Africa, a man of color who attempted to live as a human being was punished and isolated. So in South Africa, during the apartheid rule, if you wanted to live like a normal human being, you will be punished. You cannot live like a normal man, like a normal free South African. You have to tag yourself as a black South African and live as per the rules of apartheid. In South Africa, a man who tried to fulfill his duty to his people was inevitably ripped from his family and his home and was forced to live a life apart. He's talking about himself. When he was trying to raise his voice and he was trying to be part of the freedom struggle, he was termed as an outlaw, and he was forced to leave his young wife, his young children, and he was forced to spend his entire, almost most of his life time, the prime years of his lifetime in the prison. And in the same way, every freedom fighter was put into prison. A twilight, inevitable means something that you cannot run away from, and a twilight existence of secrecy and rebellion, and your hope to raise your voice for a free country was misinterpreted as a rebellion, someone who is standing against the laws of that country. I did not in the beginning choose to place my people above my family, but in attempting to serve my people, I found that I was prevented from fulfilling my obligations as a son, as a brother, as a father, and as a husband. He said, I did not want to leave my responsibilities and obligations as a family man. I wanted to take care of my mom, dad, children. But then when I realized that my freedom struggle has been tagged as an outlaw, I was curtailed and I was stopped to take care of my family because I was put into prison, and I could not do the first obligation. I could not take care of my family. This is what he's trying to say. I was not born with a hunger to be free. He was not born as a freedom fighter. He also wanted to enjoy life like a young man. I was born free, free in every way that I could know. As a young baby or a young boy, you do not know whether you are living under suppression, oppression, under apartheid, or as a free person. You're living like a normal child, free to run in the fields near my mother's hut. And he said that I used to freely run in the fields outside my mother's hut, free to swim in the clear stream. He used to swim in the rivers that ran through my village, free to roast mealies under the stars, roast corn under the stars at night time, and ride in the broad backs of slow moving bulls. And he used to ride on the bulls during the daytime as a young boy. As long as I obeyed my father and abided by the customs of my tribe. In South Africa, you have tribes. Every man belongs to a different sect, a tribe. I was not troubled by the laws of man or God. He said, as long as I was doing what I was allowed to do, permitted to do, I was safe, as per the laws of that village. It was only when I began to learn that my boyhood freedom was an illusion. Illusion means something that does not, which is not real. It looks like real, but it's not real. When he started growing up, maybe in his teenage days, when he became a teenager, he realized that he's not a free man. And his freedom, what he used to feel free when he was swimming in the water as a boy, is an illusion. It's a dream. It is not real. And when I discovered as a young man that my freedom had already been taken from me, that I began to hunger for it. And then when he became a young man, he realized that he's not a free man in his own country. And he wanted the desire to taste freedom started at that stage. So, at first, as a student, I wanted freedom only for myself. When he was studying, he said, I wanted freedom for myself. He wanted to do things that other people, fellow South Africans, were doing. The transitory freedoms of being able to stay out at night. There are certain restrictions as a South African, black South African. You cannot go to public places You cannot watch a movie, you cannot go in the public transport, travel in the same public transport. So these were small experiences, moments of freedom that he wanted to experience. He wanted to use those facilities as any other South African. Read what I pleased to go and where I chose. He wanted to, do whatever he wanted to study, what everyone else was doing. Later, as a young man in Johannesburg, is in South Africa, is a city, I yearned for the basic and honorable freedoms of achieving my potential. When he was growing up, the more you grow, your, I should say, your perspective changes, your priorities change. The freedom not to be obstructed in a lawful life, And, sorry, I yearned for the basic and honorable freedoms of achieving my potential. He wanted to show what he was worth of. He wanted to choose what he desired to study. And earning my keep of marrying and having a family, the freedom not to be obstructed in a lawful life.